to the Standards Committee this morning. For the benefit of the members of the public who are viewing at home and for the members on the Teams invite today, can I please remind all that this meeting is being recorded and will be archived for future reference on the Council's website. Present with us at the meeting today, we have 3 members of the Vale of Glamorgan Council on the Standards Committee and 3 independent members of the Standards Committee, together with Debbie Miles, Monitoring Officer, and myself, Karen Bowen, Principal Democratic Scrutiny Officer, supporting the meeting. No doubt, when appointed, the Chair will make introductions later on. Can I also do a little more housekeeping? For the members who are involved in the meeting today, could you please use the hands up function in the Teams facility whenever you wish to speak, and then the Chair then will call you and invite you to speak. Can we make sure that all discussions are held within the meeting as opposed to being placed on chat for the benefit of the public who are viewing online? However, if there are any issues with regards to your tech today, obviously you can use the chat for that, or you can get hold of one of the Democratic Services officers within my team. The first item on the agenda, then, if I can refer to the first item, is the appointment of Chair. So could I have nominations, please, for the appointment of Chair? Members. Mr. Watkins?
I propose Richard Hendicott.
Do I have a seconder? I can see Mrs. Hallett has raised her hand, so I presume that's seconding. Thank you. Do I have any further nominations? I will take the dissent that I won't then. So with the permission of the committee, I will duly state that Mr. Richard Hendicott is appointed Chair for the duration of the municipal year, and I will hand over to the Chair now to continue with the meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for appointing me as Chair. I'm happy to accept that and to continue. I think the work has got very much more interesting in the last year or so, and looks interesting to go forward. So that the next appointment is the appointment of Vice Chair. And do we have any nominations there? Yes, Mrs. Hallett. I think you're on mute.
Mrs. Tinsley to continue as Vice Chair.
Thank you. So Mrs. Tinsley to continue. Are there any seconders for that?
I second that.
Mr. Watkins. Hopefully, is there anybody against that? When no other nominations? No. Good. Well, in that case, Mrs. Tinsley will continue as Vice Chair. Can I, yes, make a few introductions? We have some new members here, Councillor Charles and Councillor Franks. Welcome to you. Congratulations, first of all, for getting in, and welcome to this committee. The work we do is interesting, and I think you'll find it rewarding. Councillor Birch, welcome back to the committee. As chairman, my only sort of rules are that I do expect the papers to be read beforehand, so that we don't have to go over everything. And normally it'll be Debbie. There should be no need for her to paraphrase what she's put in her reports. So I appreciate on other occasions there's quite a lot of reading, but if you could read beforehand, that would be very helpful. Councillor Franks, I think you've got your hand up.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind welcome. I would say I have been away for a few days. Eagerly looking forward to this meeting, obviously, but I wasn't aware that there were last-minute papers being sent out. So no, I'm afraid I haven't had an opportunity to read the late editions. So I just thought I'd bring that to your notice.
Well, that's all. Well, thank you for letting us know. I think there were 2 applications were sent in last night. I only got them this morning, effectively. The other rule I try and have is that no meeting should last for more than an hour and a half. But it depends how much work we've got to do. But basically, I try and get on with the meetings and we move on, hopefully reasonably quickly. Right.
Chair, could I just mention, for clarity for the members of the public who may be viewing this meeting, that yes, we did have late applications, but the applications were sent to all the members last night, and I gather that I understand that some might not have the opportunity to look at them, but there were a number. There wasn't just 2. There was 2 batches. There was one lot and then another late one. So yeah, there's quite a lot attached.
I haven't seen those either, I'm afraid.
They're hard copies on the desk there, Chair.
Right,
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on. Apologies for absence.
Chair, I have Mr. Alexander and Mrs. Tinsley's apologies for absence.
Right, well, there are 2 independent members who unfortunately are not with us, but I think we're quorate, aren't we? Because we've got 3 independents and 3 councillors. At the moment, I gather we haven't got a representative from the Town and Community Council, but something will happen about that. The minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of March 2022. I've read through those. I've no problem with them, and I think they're a true record of what happened. Does anybody want to comment?
Happy to move the minutes.
Thank you. So those will be, I'll sign those as being a true record of what happened. We now have to receive declarations of interest. And as the new councillors have all been trained in this now, hopefully we all know what it's about. Are there any declarations of interest? No.
If I could mention, I haven't yet been able to submit any requests for dispensation, but I possibly will be doing so regarding Dinspost Library, of which I'm a trustee, Dinspost Voluntary Concern, of which I'm a trustee, Reshaping Services, and anything relating to Dinspost Community Council, and there may be other matters. Now, I've mentioned this to the legal officer, who advised me to bring this to your notice at this meeting, so I haven't actually done anything yet, but I feel a lot more comfortable to letting everyone know, and I may or may not be submitting applications on those and other matters.
Thank you for letting us know. So I don't think that those are relevant to this meeting as such.
Okay.
If you can put them in, if you think it's appropriate, then perhaps you can put those in and they can be considered at another time.
Thank you.
Just on our earlier discussion linked into whether we should be involved in determining those matters, which potentially on the I did explain the shaping applications that the committee has previously tried to consider such applications, and it may be that for convenience today that those might be dealt with on a block, because whilst we say religious international relating to reshaping, but albeit the matters before us today, as you've indicated, not with your applications, that concern was potential conflict there, determining those matters. So in regard to that, just simply step away from that decision, like we see and just stepping away from those would be sufficient and would acknowledge the fact that there's application.
Chair, I'm sorry, but I can't hear what's being said. It's breaking up. I didn't hear a word of that. I don't know. I don't know if any of my colleagues are the same.
I'm the same.
Maybe
I'm the
I'm
same.
a bit closer, Debbie. Maybe, I think. Yeah.
I think Debbie is softly spoken. She'll try and move closer to the, it's called the owl.
It's actually breaking up, Richard. It's not just you can't hear, it's distorted.
Oh, right, okay.
I can put my headphones in, but it means that other officers would have to do share the same, otherwise it's going to be
Yeah, yeah.
That's better.
Yeah. Ah, right. I'm being informed by ICT that it should be better if Debbie does come closer. Yeah. Because it's too far away. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that clear? No.
No, I think it's because you're softly spoken. Yeah. Mr. Watkins?
Yeah, I was cut off then. I've missed about the last 5 minutes.
It's okay, Mr. Watkins, because we have had an issue in the building here. So we will be repeating that part of the meeting.
Fine, I didn't touch anything on the screen, honest.
Okay. Going on now?
We're still having not the time speak.
No, because you're on there now. Yeah. Yeah. Chair, may I unfortunately, may I suggest that we actually have a 5-minute break, come back, and we'll actually all go on to the Teams call on Teams as opposed to using the owl. Okay?
Yes.
Is that okay? So if we can adjourn for 5 minutes, yes, and then come back, say at 10 to 10. Is that all right?
But
Thank you.
What do you want us to come back on?
Come back onto the invite.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, because what we're going to do is we're going to all put our headphones on in the building here, okay, and then we'll take the owl off.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay.
benefit of the committee, because I know there were some technical difficulties. So with regards to the point that Councillor Franks raised, albeit he doesn't have applications before the committee, and obviously if you have an application before the committee, in those instances the member would have a personal prejudicial interest, and would not be able to take part obviously in the determination on their application. But as Councillor Franks has mentioned, some of the applications before the committee today are on all fours with an application that he will be submitting. So albeit it's not a personal prejudicial interest, what I have advised is that in respect of those matters, for Councillor Franks to just step away, not to leave the meeting as such, but just not to take part in the decision of those because of a potential conflict of interest. So hopefully that assists in clarifying the guidance that I've given.
Chair, can I just mention that Mrs. Hallett and Mr. Watkins are not on the call?
Well, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. Unfortunately. I would suggest, unfortunately, we're going to have to adjourn again to try and get hold of the members to find out what may be wrong now, because they just needed to rejoin on the link on their laptop, but they may be having difficulties or may not know how to do it. So I would suggest I give them a call. And I'm afraid to because we're not really quorate now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry about this.
All right, we'll just wait whilst Karen tries to contact them.
Right. So very briefly, just to follow up the point that was raised by Councillor Franks, albeit he doesn't have applications before the meeting today, as some of the applications which are on the agenda or which may be dealt with as late items, as they are, or particularly one will be on all fours with an application. It's not strictly a personal prejudicial interest, but it would be a conflict of interest. So with regard to that matter, particularly the reshaping application, which I think probably will be dealt with on block, that Councillor Franks doesn't take part in that application. The same would apply to Councillor Charles and obviously Councillor Birch as well. Hopefully that assists. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, and hopefully we're all back together again. We move on to item 6, which is applications for dispensation. And perhaps, Debbie, you could speak to this, please.
Yes, thank you. So as members will see from the agenda, the majority of applications which come before committee today and as contained in the agenda relate to reshaping services. And members will be aware, those who are not previously on the committee, but certainly from minutes of previous meetings, that these applications for members who are also on a town and community council, when dealing with matters relating to the council's transformational agenda, which is referred to as the reshaping agenda, that the members be given dispensation to speak and vote on those matters, as otherwise they would potentially be precluded. So the majority of the applications, as I say, do relate to that, and it would be my recommendation that they be accepted and accepted on block. You'll be pleased to hear. Similarly, I would also just like to highlight that in amongst the late applications which were received, if the chairman is agreeable to deal with the reshaping applications which have come in as urgent items, so the chair has a standard item on the agenda at item 12, and we could pull that aspect forward to deal in conjunction with agenda item 6. I'd recommend that the reshaping, the late applications which have come in, which relate to reshaping services, and I'll specify which they are, be also considered in conjunction with those on the agenda. So we have a late one from Councillor Wilson, relating to reshaping services. We also have a late application from Councillor Helen Payne. And bear with me as I flick through the late applications. We also have 2 other applications which I would suggest are in themselves, particularly one clearly a reshaping application. It's Councillor Ian Johnson's application. On the front of it, he refers to an application to speak and vote on matters relating to the Vale Council and Barry Town Council as a twin-hatted member, and then he goes on to explain, I'm a member of both councils and there are interrelated issues between both councils. For example, what was previously called reshaping services, service level agreements regarding Porthkerry Cemetery, and other cooperation between both councils. Now, because of the lateness of the application coming in, I think certainly on the reshaping services front, I think that might be a matter, and I'd certainly recommend that we could deal with that today in line with the other applications coming in. But with regards to the other aspects relating to service level agreements and the wider cooperation between both councils, I think there is a need to get some further clarification as to the extent and the nature of those aspects, and I think that part of the application might be something that we consider at a later stage. Similarly, with regards to Councillor Amelia Collins's application, which again refers to herself as a twin-hatted councillor. She seeks dispensation to speak and vote on all matters where the Town Council and the Vale may overlap. Unlike Councillor Johnson, there isn't further detail on the application. It refers to I'm a twin-hatted councillor on both Barry and the Vale Council. I think, and again, I think subject to it being clarified following the meeting with Councillor Amelia Collins, that the extent to which this application is being considered by committee is limited to the reshaping aspect and matters being considered by both council on reshaping, and that if she wishes to then submit a further application on other aspects, that be considered and presented to a future meeting of the committee. But just initially, I think, and we'll deal with this in stages, if you're in agreement, we could deal with those reshaping applications first.
Yeah. Well, yes. Perhaps we'll deal with 12 at the same time, which is any items which the chairman has decided are urgent. I have to say, my initial view is that we shouldn't deal with any late applications. I think the councillors were advised in May, were they? What date in May? But
I mean, certainly it was covered off in the ethics and standards training that I provided on the 12th and 13th of May.
Yes. So I'm sorry if this affects you, Councillor Franks, but if they've had since the 12th or 13th of May to put in these applications, it's not very satisfactory if they put them in effectively the day before. And so there are quite a few of them, and they're not straightforward. I haven't looked at them. Councillor Franks hasn't, and the papers were sent out late last night, which is not satisfactory. So my initial suggestion would be that those were all put off. However, Debbie has persuaded me, if you like, that where they are generic of two specific items, the reshaping and I think the schools, we could deal with those. Do the members of the committee agree with that approach? Yes, good. So if we can deal firstly with the reshaping, the recommendation is that those are accepted, but perhaps Debbie, you'll give us a short account of what reshaping is and why we should grant those dispensations.
Yes, absolutely. So the reshaping agenda is the council's transformational agenda. So this is where we're looking at ways that the council, in line with the council's corporate plan, can work more efficiently and effectively, and working very much with our colleagues in town and community councils to deliver those aspects. So, for instance, we will be looking to and consulting with town and community councils with potential additional roles that may be more effectively delivered at a community council level. So those discussions are ongoing, and the concern, of course, is that members who are also on the Vale Council, they're on both sides of the discussions with regards to that particular agenda. The other point for me to flag up, particularly for the benefit of Councillor Franks and Councillor Charles, not necessarily for this item, but for the broader items that we'll be discussing, when members are considering whether to grant a dispensation. And of course, attached to the paper, you'll see the circumstances where the committee can accede to a request either to speak or to speak and vote. And those circumstances appended to this agenda item are the circumstances as permitted by regulations. So they are categorised as A through to J, and that's why you'll see detailed on the application forms the relevant paragraphs that the individual members feel are relevant in the given circumstances. And finally, when the committee are considering whether to grant a dispensation in line with the regulations and guidance, the committee is to balance the public interest in preventing a member with a prejudicial interest from taking part in decisions against the public interest in decisions being taken by a reasonably representative group of members of the authority. So hopefully that assists.
Thank you. I think most of them are on that are to speak and vote, and the relevant paragraphs are A, C, and D. Is that right? Yes. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this generic item of reshaping? No. Are we in favour then of granting permission? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Karen, I think you prepared a list of those. So if you'd like to read those out, they will be accepted.
Sorry, I'm on mute. My apologies. Councillor Julie Aviat, Councillor Bronwyn Brooks, Councillor Janice Charles, Councillor Pam Drake, Councillor Ewan Goodjohn, Councillor Emma Goodjohn, Councillor Sally Hanks, Councillor William Hennessy, Councillor Iannucci, Councillor Gwyn John, Councillor Sandra Perks, Councillor Neil Thomas, Councillor Margaret Wilkinson, Councillor Eddie Williams, Councillor Helen Payne, and Councillor Mark Wilson.
Good. So thank you very much. The next generic group is with children, I think, and grandchildren and nieces. Do you want to speak to that, Debbie, please?
Yes, and as you've mentioned, Chair, there are a number of applications before the committee where members have indicated that they have relatives at particular schools, and that there are a number, not just on the agenda for today's meeting, and I'll defer to Karen just to run through the list of those, but also with regards to the late applications which have been received. So we have received a late application from Councillor Burnett regarding Oakfield Primary School, which is attended by her great nieces and great nephew. We've also received a late application from Councillor Christine Cave with regards to Ysgol Gymraeg Bro Morgannwg, where she has a grandchild that attends the school. Also Councillor Amelia Collins, Ysgol Gwaun y Nant and Ysgol Gymraeg Bro Morgannwg, where she has a nephew that currently attends the school and will be attending Bro Morgannwg from September. Sorry, if I go through the late ones initially, I think that covers the late ones, but if Karen could also just run through the ones specifically on the agenda. I can see there's one from Councillor Neil Thomas on Evenlode School.
And there's also one from Councillor Margaret Wilkinson as well in relation to her grandchildren. And I'm just quickly trying to find that one at the moment. A number of grandchildren. One is a Gwenvo.
And
finding it quick enough, sorry. It's Councillor Margaret Wilkinson. Yeah, Gwenvo, Cadoxton Primary and St Richard Gwyn High School.
Thank you. Right. I don't know if we need any explanation about these applications. It's basically where they have relations who are in the school and so would have an interest. It's been the custom of this committee to grant those without I think almost automatically once they're disclosed. Does anybody have any comments or questions on that? No? Is everybody happy to approve those? Good. Okay, so that list can be approved. Now, what does that leave us left with, Karen, in the main item?
Applications then that have been received, for example, in relation to employee terms and conditions, yes, but they were received, and for Gwyn John in relation to leisure and sport, right, and from Rebecca Morteo in relation to church in Wales matters, which is a co-opted member of Learning and Culture.
So which one of those should we deal with first?
Should we deal with them in the order that they appear on the agenda, yes, on the attachments to the agenda? So yes, the next one that I have is Councillor Gwyn Johns, and this is an application to speak and vote as a member of the Vale of Glamorgan Council Atlantic Major Ward. And he is making an application with regards to his prejudicial interest concerning sports fees and charges, personal interest as a life member of Llantrwit Major AFC, and he's citing as the reason to support his application his knowledge as a Vale of Glamorgan councillor. Also, he's the cabinet member for leisure and sport in the Vale of Glamorgan, and he served for 40 years. 30 years, I can't 60. Quite read that, 60 years
60, yeah.
In amateur football. Yes, so the application is to speak and vote on grounds D, E and F. So D is the nature of the member's interest is such that the member's participation in the business to which the interest relates would not damage public confidence. E, the interest is common to the member and a significant proportion of the general public. I don't think E can be satisfied. F, the participation of the member in the business to which the interest relates is justified by the member's particular role or expertise. So I think certainly D and F are relevant.
And what is your recommendation with regard to that?
I certainly, bearing in mind that Councillor Gwyn John is the relevant cabinet member and his expertise in this field with a number of years of service, my recommendation would be to grant the application.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions or comments? So are you happy to follow the recommendation that is approved? Thank you very much. Yes, we'll move on.
The next one in the order of papers is from Rebecca Morteo. Now, Rebecca is a co-opted member with a voting right on Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee, and she's seeking permission to speak and vote when matters relating to Church in Wales primary schools are being considered at meetings. Rebecca is actually, as I say, a co-opted member because of her expertise in this particular area. So very pleased to see the application coming in as a belt and braces application. She also has children at the Pendoilen Church in Wales primary school, so there are two prongs to the application, but her job does involve her working with the Church in Wales primary schools, and it's that expertise that has resulted in her being put forward by the diocese to be a co-opted member. So paragraphs D, E and F, I think certainly D and F, I don't think we can satisfy necessarily E, but I certainly would support the application to speak and vote.
Thank you. Well, it seems that seems to be the case, that if she's co-opted because of her expertise, it would be strange if she couldn't speak and vote. So any comments or questions? No? Everybody in favour? Yes. Thank you. Right.
And if I'm correct, the next application is, I think we've dealt with Councillor Wilkinson with regards to schools. the grandchildren. So I just want to make sure we're not missing one. And Councillor Wilkinson's with regards to reshaping has been dealt with. Yes, there is an application from Councillor Wilkinson with regards to employment and employee terms and conditions as a family member is employed by the authority. We have considered these the nature of these applications prior to the last local elections, and it is an application to speak and vote. Obviously, the member, as with the other matters, will need to declare the personal prejudicial interest. But if you are minded to grant the dispensation, also advise when speaking that there's a dispensation in place. Grounds D, E and F are being relied on. I think certainly D and F are relevant, and I would recommend that the application be granted.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on Councillor Wilkinson? No? Everybody in favour with following the recommendation? Yes? Good, thank you very much.
And I think that concludes dealing with the generic applications on the agenda and those generic matters coming in as late items. And also we've dealt with the more specific which are on the agenda. So the only remaining matters for consideration would be the non-generic matters which have come in as late items.
Yes, yeah. Well, my proposal is that we don't deal with those today, and that we may have to have another meeting at the end of July before. Otherwise, the next meeting is in September, and perhaps councillors could be told that there will be a special meeting when we will consider late applications. Do you approve of that
Yes.
process? Yeah, good.
Oh yes. Yeah, if I could also just mention under Appendix 2 that there is, just for noting, the use of delegated authority with regards to an application that was received. So that has been dealt with, and that is for noting.
Yes.
Yes.
That was Councillor Burnett, wasn't it? We dealt with that. Yes, good. Good. Okay, well, thank you. We'll move on from 6. The next item is observations by independent members of Town and Community Council Committee meetings. For the new councillors, you may well be aware that we have a scheme whereby the independent members, initially it was set up for the independent members to find out what was going on. So we went and sat in on council meetings and also town and community meetings, but it's moved on from there, whereby we now go in and have a look and we make some comments, and this system seems to work very well. Now, since the last meeting, I've attended a meeting. Has anybody else? No? Okay. Well, I attended a meeting of the Sully and Lavernock Community Council on the 17th of May. It was a remote hearing. This was their first meeting which they set up. So not an awful lot of business was transacted. It was remote, so we have a questionnaire, a checklist, which I complete new councillors. So I'm going through that. But you know, whether the room was well lit, for members of the public and identity cards, they weren't relevant. The meeting started on time. Motions were moved and seconded. it was generally a quite a good meeting. There weren't many issues for the chair to rule on. And when it came to part 2, that was done properly, and I, as a guest, and others were removed from the remote hearing. There were disclosures made, although they weren't really satisfactory, and I didn't think, in that they disclosed they were members of a political party, which I'm not sure is relevant. And the meeting finished on time. But there were, I think I was unsatisfied or dissatisfied with the meeting, and in the sense of the appointment of members to position on outside bodies. And I don't know quite what can be done about that. But what seemed to happen was, of course, the first appointment was the chair. So a gentleman was put in, I think he was returned as chair. And then there was a request, right, who wants to sit where and on what, who wants various appointments. And it was all done in a very haphazard manner. Some people were appointed. Some people said, well, I'll do it if nobody else wants to. Some people put themselves forward. And there seemed to be no plan as to how these positions should be covered. And especially if you'd been a new member, I don't quite know what you would have made of it. I mean, I think ideally, if the chairman and the clerk had prepared a list of where the positions were and who it was proposed to sit where, people would have a much better idea of what's involved and where they could go. And there was a bit of the attitude, well, you sat on that committee last time. Do you want to carry on? Yes, okay, or perhaps not, you know. And I think if it had been planned that, and especially for new members, that they had been allocated to places which would suit them. It wasn't possible to do it there. My only thought was that you appoint that item was put off to the next time when some thought had been put into it. But that was my my general view on it. Councillor Franks, I see your hand is up. You're on mute at the moment.
I take it I can speak on this.
Yes.
I'm a member of the Dinas Powys Community Council, and my first comment is you were a very brave man going to Surrey Community Council. That's the first comment.
Well, I was at home at the time, so it's all right.
And I'm sure they're all lovely people. But this is the problem you will often have with a council nominally made up of independent councillors, because they're by its nature, it is very difficult to have pre-planning before a council meeting. Now, those of us who have membership of more, where the councillors are more politically aligned, the things that you are mentioning are almost always resolved beforehand. Now, I won't speak for Barry, I won't speak for Penarth. There are two excellent members here who've got experience there. But had you come to Dinas Powys, you would have seen all the committee places had been agreed in advance, which would have avoided many of the issues that you have quite rightly highlighted. But that is the joy of an independent council.
I take your point. Yes. Are there any other comments? Yes, Councillor Birch.
Thank you. Yes, I'm on Penarth Town Council, and while I accept everything that Chris has said, and that it is difficult for independents to come together as a kind of coherent body and organise this, I do think that the clerk to the council should have gone through this with them, discussed with them what everything, you know, each appointment meant, what kind of time commitment it was, because I think if you're a new member, it's almost impossible to put your name forward for something when you have no idea of the time commitment or expertise, or whether in fact you've got a conflict of interest because of something else that you do. I mean, just a simple matter like knowing whether the committees, the outside bodies, meet during the day or not is going to rule people in or out. So I think that from an organisational point of view is disappointing, even though I accept what Chris said about organisation matters.
Yes, I'll come to Debbie and Pat in a second. I agree, and I think even if there's been a list provided of all the various posts, but sort of they came one after another, and there were 2 or 3 on finance, and then somebody to the school governors. So if you were a new member, you could think, oh well, I would be interested in that one. Debbie.
Thank you. Following on from receiving the chair's comments, I did take the opportunity to meet with the chair of the community council and also the clerk. And the point that Councillor Birch has well made was a point that I also made to the two of them. I also raised issues relating to the nature of reports and you know, the importance of having the details on the agenda. So yes, I share that, and that has been taken on board. So hopefully we should see an improvement in that regard going forward. There were also a couple of other points which were picked up, but we did have a very constructive discussion, and certainly from the chair's perspective of the community council, he did indicate that it was a little bit of a surprise that he was coming back in to chair the council, and he did acknowledge that on his part there might have been a little bit of lack of preparedness because of that element of surprise. But yeah, the points have been taken on board.
Thanks. Pat, did you want to speak?
I think Debbie's covered that quite well. All I was going to say is a case of shared practice, and Debbie's picked that up. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Good. There are no other observations. You'll prepare a list now, and we'll continue with this, Karen?
Yes, Chair. Currently, we've got a list, not a complete list of all town and community council meetings, but we haven't got all the dates yet because not all of them have been set by each town and community council. As soon as I do, I'll contact all the independent members, and then we'll make arrangements then to start visits from September to town and community council meetings.
Thank you.
There is another recommendation in the agenda that I should mention, that if at any time the monitoring officer feels that any meeting of the Vale or Town and Community Council should be either additional or done in that time, obviously that will be undertaken as well.
Yes, thank you. Yes, what tends to happen is that we're given a list, but we're pointed in the right direction. So Councillor Frank, so we perhaps the ones that we are considered to be working very well won't have so many visits as the others. I'll leave it at that. Okay. Debbie.
Yes, I was also just going to draw attention to paragraph 2.9 of the report, that because of limited resources and the fact that Vale Council meetings are well attended by officers of my department, that I felt that if there were concerns with regards to Vale Council meetings, that the officers would feed that through to Karen and to myself. So we felt that the focus for this committee's attention for the independent members would best be served by focusing in on the 26 town and community councils. So it's just give that a mention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to the feedback report following the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards framework training and other training.
Okay, so if I could just give an overview to the committee. It's covered in the report, but very pleased to say that all members and co-opted members with voting rights have either attended the Ethics of Standards training on the 12th or 13th of May, or the follow-up sessions in end of May and June. One of the beauties of working off remote meetings was that we could record the training sessions, and those who were not able to attend were given the opportunity to view the footage. And then I had two separate sessions, each for an hour long, was dedicated to it, to give those members who didn't or were not able to attend on the 12th or 13th the opportunity to discuss any particular points of concern or clarification. So that worked very well, and as I say, all members have attended. I haven't at this stage received a report on the formal feedback following those sessions, but I know that is being collated by colleagues in Democratic Services, and that feedback will be shared when it's available with the committee, albeit there were some very kind words shared at the end of the session. So I think all very, very positive. And as part of the feedback, I took on board Mrs. Tinsley's comment to factor in a question as to whether members had understood the training, so that if there is any further requirement for a point of clarification, that would be highlighted and we could address that. So that was the Vale of Glamorgan Council's training. Also, the One Voice Wales, together with myself, led on the training for town and community councils, where we sent out invites to all town and community councils to send along representatives, and I'm also pleased to say a number of clerks attended. I think we could have had a few more attending, but 76 in at the end attended those sessions. And I think as of last week, Paul Egan of One Voice Wales had advised me he'd only received one feedback form, but that was very positive. So we will be chasing that up to see if we have any further feedback. What I can advise, and I have advised clerks to town and community councils at my 6 monthly meeting, is that One Voice Wales have in fact flagged up that Welsh Government are also funding 2 additional free places at One Voice Wales training on ethics and members code of conduct. So there's, for those that did miss the training that we offered on the 20th, 30th of May and 1st of June, there's still some free training which is available. And of course also One Voice Wales can be commissioned to undertake training at a reasonable fee, I'm advised, for those town and community councils that didn't manage to or haven't been able to take up those offers of free training. So yes, obviously a lot of work, but yeah, well attended.
Well, thank you, Debbie. I'd like to place on record my thanks, and I'm sure that the committee's thanks for the amount of work that you and your team, especially Karen, have put in. I shouldn't think you've had any rest since May. It really has been very, very impressive, the amount of work you've done. So thank you very much for that. I noticed I've got in my diary next Thursday, the 30th, 5 o'clock. Yes. Sorry, Councillor Franks. I think you're on. Councillor Franks, can you hear me? Oh, right. Yes, next Thursday, I've got an Equalities and Diversity meeting from 5 till 7. And I think that's compulsory for Standards Committee. Is that right? Yes. So presumably the other members are attending that at some stage, either that one or another one.
Chair, can I mention that that training is compulsory for all members, including co-opted members and lay members? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And elected members of the Vale. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Good. Thank you very much. We move on to item 9, monitoring officer meetings with clerks of town and community councils.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just very briefly add to the report. I held the latest 6-monthly meeting with clerks of the town and community councils on the 15th of June. The items on the agenda set out at paragraph 2.2. Pleased to say that those that attended all confirmed that acceptance of office and undertaking of the members' code of conduct had taken place. Again, with the meeting that I held on the 15th of June, we ensured that that was recorded, and links to that has been shared with clerks that were unable to attend the meetings. They can view that in their own time. So I think, again, that's another plus to the digital revolution. So pleased with that. Also highlighted with the clerks the importance of sharing standing orders, also members' code of conduct, and the guidance, the Ombudsman's guidance, which everybody on the call agreed with the importance of that. I raised with the clerks the generic observations of the independent members regarding the meetings of town and community councils which had been attended since my last 6-monthly meeting, and also spoke about the pending visits, which all clerks are very supportive of. So that's just some additional information.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions there? No, we're really happy. Good. Item 11, correspondence with the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. I beg your pardon. Sorry. Oh, yes. Sorry. Matters for consideration. Meeting with the group leaders, All Wales Standards Forum, progress with regard to the Richard Penn report, and recommendations, update on the Welsh Government consultation on the standards of conduct, statutory guidance and expression of interest for the Community Council representative on the Standards Committee. Yes.
It's a very catchy title, isn't it?
But ripped off the tongue very easily.
It didn't it? I was just very conscious that there are a number of matters that I wanted
Yes.
to update the committee on. So we felt that this vehicle was the best way of doing that, rather than individual reports. So just going through those one by one, the All Wales Standards Forum, members of the committee will be aware that this is a recommendation of the Richard Penn recommendations, which are working their way through consideration by colleagues of Welsh Government. And members will be aware that there are certain elements of Richard Penn's recommendations. It's felt that councils could embrace and run with before we get the final recommendations, guidance from Welsh Government. And this is one of those areas. It's something that's been discussed on and off for quite some time. And more recently, over the last couple of monitoring officer meetings, or Wales monitoring officer meetings, we've been considering this approach of an All Wales forum. You're conscious that we do have an annual conference, but this is in addition. It's so that we can share best practice across Wales, and that there is an appetite for this. Only this week, and my colleagues we're signing up to being part of the All Wales Standards Forum, and colleagues are now looking at terms of reference of that forum. So they're very much in an early stage, the terms of reference, but I will be bringing those to committee, but in line with the indications of this committee previously, I have expressed the interest of the Vale being party to that All Wales approach. So that's the first item. I'm happy to run through each of the other items if you wish, as we're going.
Yes, I think
Should
so.
we do
Yes. you go
Thank you.
through that. Yeah, and we'll have comments at the end.
So the second substantive area is the progress with regards to the Richard Penn recommendations. So the All Wales Monitoring Officer meeting earlier in the month, we had the opportunity to meet with Michelle Morris, the recently appointed Public Services Ombudsman for Wales, and have in part a discussion with regards to the Richard Penn recommendations. And the Ombudsman indicated that she would be meeting with colleagues from Welsh Government over the summer to assist and inform the consultation on the recommendations, which is proposed for the autumn of this year, with any potential legislative changes coming in next year. And it was agreed at the monitoring officer meeting that a number of monitoring officers make themselves available also for that meeting with the Ombudsman and Welsh Government. So we're currently looking at dates for that, which look as if they're going to be during July, late July, I think, mid-late July. So I have volunteered to be part of that meeting, and good. Obviously I'll keep the committee posted on that. The next point is just to update committee with regards to the consultation on the Standards of Conduct statutory guidance that was considered by committee prior to the May elections. This consultation had a deadline of the 16th of May. Committee considered the report, made one amendment. The report was agreed by Cabinet, also Scrutiny Committee, including the amendment made by Standards Committee, and that's been duly submitted to Welsh Government by the deadline of the 16th of May. And the last point that I wanted to raise, as members will be aware, Councillor Cuddy is not with us at the moment, insofar as his term of office, in line with the statutory provisions, has had to come to an end. I think, to be fair to Councillor Cuddy, he did serve the maximum term, which is a second term of office, and I'm sure the committee will want to express their thanks to Councillor Cuddy for his input over the years, which has certainly been very much valued by myself. And also just to be aware that we have written out to the clerks, to the 26 town and community councils, for expressions of interest to nominate a community councillor, so that we can go through an appointment process. So that's ongoing, and that was a matter which I also highlighted at my meeting on the 15th of June with town and community councils. So we'll be bringing a report on that as well.
Have we had any expressions of interest as yet?
Not at this stage, okay. But no doubt the clerks will be liaising with their councils.
Yeah, I think the only one you perhaps didn't cover was the meeting with group leaders, but we're going to have to organise that, aren't we, now?
Yes, so
that's under the new policy.
Yes, absolutely. I think we were possibly a little bit ambitious at the last meeting, hoping to have a meeting in between the elections and now with the group leaders. Of course, it's been a particularly busy time, not least with the training, but also obviously with the work of the members, to sort of get the ball rolling with regards to that statutory duty. I did pick this up as part of the ethics and standards training, so it has been covered off, and of course there's awareness of the new statutory duty, not just with the political group leaders, but also all councillors and all co-opted members. And so the next step will be to arrange the meeting in the not too distant future.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments to Debbie over that? She's done an awful lot of good work on those subjects. And I would agree that there ought to be a formal letter sent to Councillor Cuddy. Is that all right? Can we do that from this committee to thank him for his input over the years?
Chair, is the committee happy that we deal with you directly on that, or would they wish to see the letter? No, they're happy.
No.
Yeah, they're happy for it to be dealt with.
Yes.
Consultation be dealt. Lovely. Thank you.
No, I don't think we need 8 of us to write a letter. We'd have 8 different drafts, I think. Right. Correspondence with the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales.
Thank you, Chair. So since the last meeting, there has been correspondence, and as you're aware, ordinarily, because of the confidential nature of that correspondence, we would pick that up under part 2. So if members would move part 2, I can then brief members.
Thank you. Well, before we do, just before we move on to part 2, are there any other items which have been referred that I may have to consider urgent under 12? Presumably not. Karen?
No, Chair.
No, fine.
Nothing.
So thank you. Somebody proposed moving to part 2. Was that Councillor Birch?
Councillor Charles.
Yeah, and Councillor Charles. Right.
Before we move to part 2, can I just, for the benefit of the public who may be viewing this meeting today, advise that we now will be not recording the meeting, and it will be taken off live stream.
Thank
you.
you.
If you could bear with us while we do that, I'll be grateful.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Andrew, can you confirm that the live stream is gone? Are you able to